Let me start the discussion by referring to the union budget this year. The education sector has, in fact, got the best ever in terms of growth of around 8.2% increase compared to the previous year's budget, not just the previous year, but all the rest of the year's budget. And one of the big the issues that the government wants to address is the skilling, reskilling of the youth, and they have something called the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, version 4.0, which focuses on skilling, reskilling, and upskilling the nation's youth. In this connection, Mr. Varma, I'd like to ask you about how technology can contribute to the success of the government initiative.
Yeah, I think, see, technology is a tool. It's merely a tool, right? It doesn't by itself solve anything. You know, when it's used well by the people at scale, we see transformation. And we saw that in the, I just want to take a few minutes to give the reason why India is very, bullish about technology being a lever for democratizing access. And that's very important. The cell phone revolution was really the change for us, right? We saw internet coming through in 90s. Some of us, older people, by the way, not younger people. But in the 90s, the internet came through. But Indians were quite, it's a major gap of the haves and the have-nots. You know, only few people had internet. Some of us had internet access as early as '94, but we were all very privileged in the sense we were in the right place, right time to get access to it. But and the landlines during that time, we were waiting for 5 years, 10 years to get a phone connection. Having a phone connection was extremely hard. Getting a phone connection. So what changed for us is the cell phone revolution, where we leapfrogged. In one sense, that's a term we use, right? To completely go from no phone to almost everyone having a phone. Not everyone, in the sense, at scale. Millions and hundreds of millions of people having a phone. That changed, I think, the first taste of success for India came through that dramatic, at-scale access to technology. And we didn't have to teach technology to poor people or underprivileged people, or we believe, who can't use technology. We hear that, right? People can't use technology. People they know exactly how to use technology if it unlocks value for them in their life. And they can, and they will. They will figure it out. They'll ask their friends, they'll ask other people to learn it. In 2009, we began the next set of journey with Aadhaar as an identity program. Currently, 1.36 billion people have Aadhaar. Pretty much everybody has Aadhaar. And then the belief, and Aadhaar is a project that the largest similar project was 1/10 of a size. Okay, so we pulled off real magic, and to reach 1 billion people in Aadhaar, it only took 5.5 years. So we really, something magic happened. A set of series of plus ones. Some of you are familiar with that term. Plus series of things that you did correctly to get Aadhaar there. But Aadhaar set for India, when the Digital India new Prime Minister came in, the Digital India initiative he launched, 2000, he was very uppish on technology even when he was in Gujarat. But when he came to center, he said, technology is the means to unblock access. So access is like a highway. If you don't even have road, you can't get anywhere. So, right? So, just because you have road doesn't mean you will get anywhere. The inverse is not true, but I'm just saying, but not having a road is not a choice for a country like us. So what does it mean to build digital highways? Was very, very question we were all asking at that time. And Digital India is a very broad initiative in that sense to say, how can technology transform the lives of people by unblocking opportunities, access to opportunities. Doesn't mean everybody will leverage it, doesn't mean everybody will benefit. So a lot of people who are in the social sector get confused about this question. Even surprisingly, a few weeks back, a journalist asked me, does ONDC solve something? Or she was asking, did UPI solve financial inclusion? Nothing gets solved. I think we are not dearth of problems. I think problems continue to, we create problems for others, we have enough problems of our own. And anyway, but I think the real question is that it's a necessary condition, right? You cannot not have a phone. You cannot not have education. You cannot not have connectivity. Doesn't mean everybody will be healthy and wealthy and opportunity and all that thing, right? The utopian thing may not happen. So, but equity in access is what we are looking for. And that 5 years of that digital India with DigiLocker, UPI, today UPI, when UPI started, before that, we had 22 million people with credit cards, 50, 70 million with debit cards. Today UPI is used by UPI protocol, underlying protocol, UPI-based system is used by 500 million people. 200, 300 million people with smartphone and 200 odd million people with no phone using UPI, by the way, using their fingerprint. It uses the same UPI protocol behind the scene. So the power of technology, if you can imagine it as a highway that opens the opportunity for ecosystem players to build solutions on top of that and truly create the diverse solutions out there, we can make that dramatic change. And that belief is now expanding into education and skilling, which is under architecture called India. It's currently termed India. They had come up with some complex Sanskrit-sounding names subsequently, I presume. But, half of the names, I can't figure it out. Anyway, but, then we have Ayushman Bharat Digital Mission for health, digital health, access to health. Affordable and accessible health is a huge issue, health and wellness. Agriculture, and commerce, and finance. Fin is anyway, fintech and financial inclusion is generally ahead in tech, right? But rest of the part is not good. And even in judiciary.
Lead to a digital divide, and how do you bridge that gap? The rich and the poor, and how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, so this is a question. So today, for example, men get smartphone, women don't get smartphone. I mean, as a first priority. Children should get or shouldn't get, I don't know. There are a lot of arguments about both, okay? Maybe children should get for some time. Maybe not all the time. We don't know. We may be old, okay? I don't know. Maybe we are old. Maybe children are okay getting it. But I think there is a real divide. There is a real divide of technology not reaching the intended people. But at the same time, if we have the right policy measures and the right focus, we can bridge that gap. For example, we give umpteen amount of money free doles, right? In the sense that in terms of all kinds of, so we could look at providing, and a lot of them do. I mean, a lot of states give smartphones today to children or high schoolers, laptops. I think we could bridge both by government giving, bridging that gap, connectivity gap. For example, we have a BharatNet that has laid fiber all the way, but we still don't have the last mile connectivity on the fiber side. And on the mobile connectivity, we are awesome, by the way, compared to some other LATAM and African countries and so on, right? But we can still improve. And states like Goa and many of those states are really pushing for connectivity to every home. PM Vani program, which is Vani is open architecture for Wi-Fi. Even the small social entrepreneur or the shopkeeper can actually resell. We completely changed the policy, by the way, telecom policy, which was heavily lobbied, to allow resale of Wi-Fi. It's amazing how much we have done, but unless the ecosystem wakes up, unless all of you, ecosystem as a whole, leverages the policy and leverages the digital highways, nothing will happen. Government can't solve everything, or large companies shouldn't be expected to solve, because revenue models don't necessarily work out. But I think it is important that we be very, very focused on the gap. The gap is big, and the gap ought to be closed. But we see the gap closing. And we are very, at least personally, I see identity. We saw that. Cell phones, we saw. Identity, we saw. UPI, I told you, right? 22 million people were using cards. 500 million people using digital payments. 500 million is not a small, several countries put together. And we managed to get there. So expanding the pie and inclusion is actually a possibility, but we have to be all extremely cognizant about it. Otherwise, we don't take it for granted. The divide could bite us back, yeah.
How do you enable technology that decentralizes the entire system, and speeds up collective decision-making process? And if you look at the government, it's there with only a few, and accessibility is less, and as I understand, you're a very strong advocate of open network-based, tech-based initiative as well. So if you could give some examples.
Yeah, I'll try not to go into tech, by the way. It's quite boring. Yeah. But I think with great power comes great responsibility. Like Spider-Man says, tech is a great power. And it has to be, if you create centralization as a mental model, it is fundamentally against the diversity of India. I mean, if you have to amplify diversity, and if you have to amplify the agency and decision-making power at the grassroots, on the ground level, then technology has to be given as a tool, not as a solution. See, if technology solution is centralized, that means I know what you want, I know how you should be using it, and I'm simply distributing the solution to you. That's a very bad setup. We should use the technology to remove information asymmetry, tool asymmetry, capability asymmetry, but still allow the solutioning and decision-making happen at the decentralized level. This is an extremely important point. In fact, a lot of our efforts in the at least last few years have been to create decentralization of technology, but it's very hard. I mean, I'll tell you, the natural mental model to take ownership of it, in one sense, or the state level or a central level, all the decision-making very quickly gravitates towards that. So we have to be on our toes to say, no, technology is about removing information asymmetry, removing capability asymmetry, and tool and opportunity asymmetry. Give it as a tool. Let the actual solutioning, contextualization, solutioning, decision-making happens by the collective people who are very, very aware of the local context and understand the local nuances of how it should be done. Otherwise, centralized solutioning is a danger. So I would say that's why DPI, digital public infrastructure, when we use that term, why is it that infrastructure is a key word? It's not centralized digital solutions. Digital solution is, even when we did Diksha, for example, and some of you are probably working on Diksha, we were very, very wary. When we are all building that, Diksha will come across as an app, and Diksha will come across as a solution, and nobody will do anything, and everything is centrally controlled. That's it's a bad setup, right? But so now, fine, but it does take some time. It takes time to undo that mental model correction. But now Diksha is opened up for content creation. Now they're allowing teachers. Now the latest policy measures say even the teachers, local teachers can create. There was a confusion about who can create content. Will it become like YouTube? Because there's a trust issue, parents are using it. So there is a lot of nuance played out, a lot of behavioral reasons why it's played out that way. But mental model should be this. Technology is just a tool. It has to be handed over, technology, data, information, and capability along with that. Has to be baked into the local context, and the local collectives have to come up. Some reference solutions and all that thing can be created centrally, not a problem, but people should be able to create more solutions on the ground. And I think if you don't do this, the technology will it'll have a reverse effect, because technology is a great power to actually sort of control in one sense, right? So you have to be very, very, very nuanced about it in terms of policy making, decision making. Many of you are part of the policy making as well. So you have to you don't oppose technology. I see this with a lot of, traditional NGO-like mindset, right? Where tech is different from your tech guys screw up. We do screw up, but I'm just saying, but we collectively screw up. It's not that you don't screw up. Everybody screws up, but I'm just saying that it's a collective responsibility. But look at how can I use technology and have the conversation to say stopping technology is not the way. Technology is a great leveler. Technology is the only leveler, I would argue, that actually completely democratizes. Today, I don't have need to access a good library. I grew up, I had to have an access to library to know anything. Today, no child needs a library to know. I also know fake news and all that thing, but I'm just saying it's part of democratization. But it's amazing how much we have journeyed in terms of, leveling. It's like a Tetris game. The bottom layers keep getting leveled, right? So technology is a great leveler, but use it in the right way. I think that's what I would say.
One popular question I'm sure all the audience would also like to know, you being the principal architect of Aadhaar, over the last few years, actually, the last couple of years, you've seen usage of Aadhaar actually grow up, and as well as UPI-based apps. One thing that we find that our adaptability to, as far as India is concerned, has been huge, fast, and seamless, compared to, say, even the Western world, whom we call as the developed world. And they are far way behind.
On the digital side, for sure. Yeah.
Your thoughts on this and why this is happening? And I think that's some kind of a digital divide there as well, right?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things happen. It's like innovator's dilemma problem, right? In the sense, people who are developed, who are stuck in time, we will also get stuck in time. I'm telling you, this is nothing to do with West or East or anything, okay? We get used to it. Our habits are hard to break. And people would say, why should I change? So anybody who invested in, physical infrastructure, like airports in the US, you'll see they're stuck in time. They're completely stuck in time in 80s, right? So 70s, 80s was massive airports, we used to see in movies. But they're stuck in time. We didn't have airports at all. So now we have a lot of airports, but the new airports. But we'll also do the same thing because correction is very hard. But with digital correction, if you imagine digital as a set of building blocks, set of Lego blocks that we can evolve constantly. Digital allows us to evolve faster than physical infrastructure. So digital should allow us to keep up with time, and our scale is very large. So the issue is a lot of times getting stuck in comfort zone of, US, for example, credit cards work so well. Everybody has credit cards, everybody has credit card machine. Habits are set, formed. They don't really see why something like UPI is really needed. It's sort of gets stuck in time. But I think from a G20 perspective, we are a G20 presidency this year. In post-COVID, I think it was a significant realization, by the way, post-pandemic, that investment in digital infrastructure is as important as investment in physical infrastructure, like highway, which traditionally everybody understood. They never understood. They sort of outsourced everything, or they did nothing about it, right? India is the one who systematically showed what does it mean to build that rails, digital rails, on top of which the entire ecosystem can innovate, and then dramatically bringing formalization of the economy and bringing everybody to the fold. And it's a long way to go, but we are on that journey much faster than others. So there's a lot of conversation because of that. So G20, most of the meetings are filled with DPI topics. It's amazing how much everybody wants it, which is also the reason why many of you, including Shishaloka, many of what you're doing, if you can also put as much as possible, if you can also put it out as a digital public good, as open source out, other countries who are looking at similar infrastructure as what you are doing, it will get faster and cheaper for them. So because instead of starting from scratch. So it will be important for us to contribute to every nation as well. Any nation wanting to build something similar should not have to have such tech and policy, and we are very serendipitously so lucky in India, okay? So many things came together for us, internet and smartphones and, policy and, IT boom, and the startup entrepreneurial ecosystem, social entrepreneurial ecosystem is all coming together so well for us. It's not the case with many countries. So if we can put out as many assets as DPGs, it'll actually help other countries build as well. So, but everybody has realized it for sure, that this is a This is not something that I can take it for granted. The investment in digital infrastructure for equitable growth, digital economy, is the topic of this year.
Huge success story, right, in India?
Huge, yeah.
Yeah.
They're all staring at us. I think that we need to wind up. So they're all starting to,
question to
they're
ask.
saying, what are you talking? Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
want one more
Stop
question
it.
to ask, pardon me, on this.
He's totally taking advantage of it. Yeah.
So technology actually pushes for standardization, whereas diversity is also very important.
Brilliant question.
So I would like to know from you, how does one enable diversity there?
So the U part of UPI, U part of ONDC also is called unified and not uniform. And
Okay.
Rohini Nilekani speaks about it all the time.
Yeah.
And you would have heard all that thing in our own lingo, in many of our lingo. If you don't unify, you don't get the scale and combinatorial power. You'll be all in silo. Everybody will try to do little in silo. Nothing is connected. So interoperability. Highways, that's what it did. It connected cities and towns. Railroads connected everything. Internet connected everything in a common way. So it is important that we unify, but not force uniformity. I think it is in a lot of our discussions, a lot of our thoughts, and it is the only way. So 2 ways to deal with diversity is this. Think unifying and not uniform, and think decentralization and not centralization of solutioning and decision making.